To protect my mom from his abuse, I ended up killing my dad during one of their fights. Since I was under 16, I wasn't sent to jail, but my mom turned against me. "It's all your fault, you ungrateful bastard. Why don't you just drop dead, you murderer? I'm happy to get beaten. Who asked you to save me? Why couldn't you die instead, you little bastard?" I ended up with depression from her constant nagging and verbal abuse day after day. On the day of the college entrance exam, she locked me in the room and wouldn't let me take the test. In despair, I jumped off a building to end my life, only to wake up reborn on the day I killed my father. This time, I didn't grab that kitchen knife again. I was 14 when I accidentally stabbed my father to death. My dad was a gambling addict who always lost money, and whenever he lost, he'd start drinking. After drinking, he'd start beating his wife and kids. That Saturday night, he stumbled home drunk like always. My mom hurried over to help him, but was kicked to the ground. Then he grabbed my mom by the hair and started beating the shit out of her. My mom was screaming in pain, shouting my name at the top of her lungs. To protect her, I bolted out of the room. When Dad saw me helping Mom, he got even madder and started coming after me too. At 14, I was small and frail from years of poor nutrition, but still a teenage boy when it came down to it. My dad's brutality triggered my rage, and in a fit of desperation, I charged into the kitchen and snatched the fruit knife. The tip of this kitchen knife was razor sharp. Mom never kept it in the living room, in case my dad might impulsively stab her during his violent fits. But she never expected me to charge into the kitchen and grab that razor-sharp kitchen knife. By the time I snapped back to reality, my father was already collapsed in a pool of blood. My mom's stinging slap snapped me back to reality. "You ungrateful bastard! How dare you stab your own father? If your father dies, I'll kill you myself. Call 120 already." The woman who cowered before her husband now whipped me with full force. Her slap was so hard she ruptured my eardrum. But by the time we got him to the hospital, it was too late. He didn't make it because he lost too much blood. My mom called the police right away, wanting them to haul me off and put a bullet in me to pay for my dad's death. But unfortunately, she failed. One reason was I was only 14 back then and hadn't even turned 16 yet. Second, I didn't mean to kill him. Security cameras caught the whole thing. Eventually, I was let go. But if I knew how things would turn out, I'd rather have gone to jail. Back home, Mom hated my guts over Dad's death. Not only did she refuse to get my ear treated, but she started treating me like the enemy. Every day, she'd hurl abuses at me, calling me a murderer, an ungrateful brat who'd even stab his own dad. She went all out to tell everyone in the neighborhood and at school about my crimes, hoping everyone would push to get a father killer like me thrown into jail. After that, she never cooked for me again. She wouldn't let me touch a thing she bought, all to make me suffer and get back at me for my dad's death. Everyone at the community office and school knew I'd killed my father. When they saw how my mom abused and mistreated me, they all felt sorry for me. With their help, I didn't end up starving on the streets. To get out of that suffocating home, I studied like crazy. I worked my ass off to get into college and escape that hellhole. But on the day of the college entrance exam, my mom spiked my water with sleeping pills and locked me in the house. When I woke up and saw her face twisted with vengeful satisfaction, I completely lost all hope in life. Don't you want me dead? Then I'll make it happen. In the next life, even if he beats you to death, I won't even glance your way. Under her hateful gaze, I jumped from the rooftop. When I came to, I was back in my tiny room at home. My right ear, once deafened by the beating, was now oddly acute, no longer entirely soundproof. As I zoned out, my mom's familiar voice came from the door. "You're back? I kept some chicken soup for you." The next moment, my mom's shriek pierced through the living room as she was sent flying, followed by thunderous crashes of furniture getting wrecked. I jolted awake. I was back. I was back in my past life on the night I killed my father. Soon, Dad's curses mingled with Mom's pleading and pained whimpers from the living room. A few minutes later, their fight spilled over to my bedroom door. Just like in my past life, my father slammed my mother's body against the door with a heavy thud. Then came my mom's desperate plea. Son. Xiaokai, save me. Sob sob, honey, stop hitting me. We really don't have any money left. I'll give you the money once I get paid next month. But my dad wouldn't let up, hitting her again with a heavy punch. You useless bitch. Is that all you can make each month? Other women sell themselves for their husbands, but you're too good for that, just lazing around at home all day. I'll beat you dead, you good for nothing. Do you always look down on me? Who the hell do you think you are? Thud thud thud. The dull thudding of fists pounding into flesh reverberated repeatedly outside my door. The flimsy door kept shaking, like it could give way any second. But this time, I didn't bolt out to rescue my mom like last time around. Wasn't she the one who chose to stay with my dad, even if it meant taking the beatings? As her son, how could I not show respect and wish her all the best? I really hoped they'd stay together forever, stuck with each other for good. I grabbed my earphones, plugged into my phone jack, and turned up the music, drowning out the thuds and screams outside. After about a dozen seconds, the door finally gave way and burst open from outside. My mom stumbled into my room. She desperately reached out to me, eyes pleading, son, help. He's gonna beat me to death. Sobs shook her body as she begged. Just then, Dad glared at me with murderous eyes. Got some balls now, huh? You think you can mess with my shit? You wanna get beat too? I just looked at them calmly and said, take your fight outside. Don't mess with my studying. Hearing this, my mom stared at me in disbelief. Xiaokai, what did you just say? I shot her an impatient look. I said take it outside. Didn't you always preach beating is care and cursing is love? If Dad beats you, doesn't that mean he loves you? Otherwise, why wouldn't he go beat up other women? Don't you actually enjoy getting beaten by Dad? If you want to flirt and fight, take it to your room. Keep your lovey-dovey drama away from my study zone. Can't you see I'm prepping for the entrance exam? Mom stared at me, stunned. My father grabbed her by the hair and yanked her into the living room. Before leaving, he sneered, at least the kid knows what's up. Look at you, asking for a beating, still expect your son to save you? Keep dreaming. He kept punching and kicking her, taking out his gambling rage on her body. I stepped right over, shut the door, and locked it. About 10 minutes later, my dad finally wore himself out and collapsed snoring on the sofa, letting the living room settle into silence. At 11 p.m., I went out to get some water. Then I saw my mom walk over to the sofa with a blanket. Worried he'd catch a chill after he'd been drinking, she carefully covered him up. But the moment she saw me, her eyes turned vicious. In a hushed, disappointed voice, she demanded, Xiaokai, I was begging for your help earlier. Why didn't you do anything? How come I never realized you were this heartless, standing by while your own mother gets beaten without lifting a finger? You're such an ungrateful brat. I was used to her insults, curses, and accusations by now. To me, it was just noise. I felt nothing, just a bitter amusement. After putting the lid on my cup, I looked at her coldly. If you like taking the beatings, wouldn't me stepping in mess with your marital bonding? Plus, it's not like I didn't help you before. You got all pissy when I hit your husband and even slapped me twice. From now on, I'm staying out of your marital business. I'm just a kid, and teacher says my main thing right now is studying. After that, I didn't even bother to check her reaction, just turned around and headed back to my room. This time, even if Dad beat her to death right before my eyes, I wouldn't say half a word more. In my past life, I did try talking my mom into divorcing this rotten man before accidentally killing my dad that night. Mom, I'm all grown up now. I can take care of us. Just leave him already. But then my mom slapped me hard. What's gotten into you, you little brat? If I divorce your dad, you'll just become some broken home kid. How's that gonna help you? What kid doesn't want their parents to stay together? Yet here you are, trying to split us up. That time, she grabbed a broom and beat me for what felt like forever, like she was dumping all the crap Dad put her through right onto me. She hit me so hard. That's when I realized my mom was actually pretty good at hitting people, only her blows were directed at someone weaker, like me. She didn't stop until the broom handle snapped, crying and apologizing to me. Ethan, I'm so sorry. Mom didn't mean to do that. Mommy just lost her temper for a second, okay? Could you forgive me just this once? According to psychology, kids naturally depend on and trust their moms. So even when a mom loses her temper and hits her kid, the child will still cry and crawl back to her, begging for a hug and some comfort, not wanting her to hate them. In my past life, that's exactly how I was. Even though I was really upset after getting beaten, I still forgave her the next day when Mom came to dress my wounds with tears in her eyes. Another time, when I saw my dad beating her way too hard, I ran to my room and called the cops. She walked over and slapped me, then nervously told the cops it was just a kid making a false alarm, insisting Dad never laid a hand on her. This happened time and time again. Every time I got into it with my dad, she'd end up telling me to just take it and not hold a grudge against him. Ethan, don't blame your dad. It's all because I'm not capable enough and can't make enough money. Your dad was really good to me before. I'm sure he'll turn himself around someday. He woke up this morning and apologized, promised he'll do better next time. Your dad didn't mean it, really. He's just been going through a rough patch and needed to blow off steam. We should learn to be more understanding of Dad. She kept hoping my dad would wake up, trapped in his cycle of hitting her and then sweet-talking her. She grew more obedient, completely devoted to this man who beat her without mercy. Except for my dad, she couldn't see anyone else, not even me. Fortunately, this time around, I've stopped holding out hope for her. No matter what happens to her in the end, she brought it on herself. At noon, my dad actually came home with a pound of meat for once, putting on this pained, guilty face as he said to my mom, "Honey, I'm sorry, okay? My bad. I was such a drunk asshole last night taking it out on you. Come here, let me check. Does it hurt anywhere?" Mom's eyes welled up with tears at Dad's fake concern. She shook her head right away. "Honey, it's nothing. I know you didn't mean to. Look how tired you've been from all those late nights. I'll whip up that stir-fried meat for you right now." My mom quickly responded. My dad nodded, satisfied. Watching my mom's busy back, his eyes slowly turned dark and greedy. Mom had dinner ready in no time and hollered for me to come eat. At the dinner table, Mom kept putting meat into Dad's bowl. "Eat more. It'll help you build up your strength," she said. Hearing that, I couldn't help sneering inside. Yeah, he's gotta build up his strength so he can beat you harder next time, huh? Just as I was about to pick up some meat, Mom's chopsticks came smacking down on my hand. She glared at me, eyebrows furrowed. "Ethan, you're old enough now. Can't you act more considerately? Can't you see how worn out your dad is? How dare you take meat from him? Can't you even feel sorry for your dad?" My mom glared at me with disgust and blame. I shot her a look but stayed silent, bitterness twisting inside. I was 14 that year, but I looked barely 10, all skin and bones. And Dad? She's been stuffing him until he's fat as a pig. If she wasn't blind, she'd know who actually needs the extra nutrition. But I was already used to my mom's crazy antics and willful blindness, so her neglect and coldness didn't faze me anymore. I should have realized earlier. All her love went to my dad, and what I got wasn't even a single strand's worth. I kept quiet, picked up some greens, and started eating. After dinner, I grabbed a woven plastic bag and headed out to the trash bins to collect recyclables to sell at the recycling station. Counting on Mom to pay for my schooling wasn't gonna happen anymore. If I want to break free from this family, I need to start hustling for cash right now. After a whole day collecting recyclables on Sunday, I made 14 yuan. If I stick to plain steamed buns, that should get me through the week. On Monday morning, when I was heading to school, my mom didn't give me a single cent, just as expected. She didn't even leave me breakfast before rushing off to work. To get my dad his gambling money, she never takes time off work no matter how badly he beats her, terrified of losing her job. But I couldn't be bothered to care about her life anymore. When I got to school, I went to my homeroom teacher and asked to stay in the dorm. The teacher agreed right away. Now that I'm in my 3rd year of junior high, the crucial period for the high school entrance exams, staying on campus would help me focus better on studying. After a week of surviving on plain steamed buns, I slowly got used to the daily grind of 9th grade. Thanks to all the studying I'd done in my past life to escape that house, returning to junior year made relearning everything pretty straightforward. If I just keep scavenging for scraps, there's no way I'll save up enough for school expenses in the coming years. Gotta ace those exams and grab that top prize cash. Number 1 high school offered generous rewards for top students. The top of the grade got 2,000 yuan. That 2,000 would last me quite a while. After staying at school for a month, I finally had to go back home when the holiday came. When I got home, Mom was humming to herself while cooking. When she saw me come in, she beamed and said, "You're back, Ethan. Go wash up for dinner." I glanced at her and noticed a new baijiu bottle on the TV cabinet, a rose stuck inside. My mom seemed to be waiting for me to notice it. When she noticed me looking at the rose, her face lit up and she said gently, "Your dad's really been turning over a new leaf lately. Look, he even got me a rose." I said flatly, "How nice." Then I headed to my room with my backpack. That evening, my mom was being uncharacteristically generous and gave me a bowl of chicken soup. "Ethan, you must be tired from studying. Here, drink some soup." I finished the chicken soup without a word and went back to my room to keep studying. The final exams are next month, and getting that bonus is what matters most to me. That night, my dad came home in a fantastic mood and laid on the sweet talk for my mom. "Honey, you've really had it tough all these years. Look, I got you this cake. Give it a try." My mom got all teary-eyed again. I could tell there was something off about my dad's words. When someone's overly nice for no reason, they're up to no good. My dad suddenly acting so nice toward Mom definitely has something fishy. But I won't warn my mom anymore. Even if I warned her, she wouldn't believe me anyway. She'd just think I couldn't stand seeing them happy together. Even if my dad sold her off, I wouldn't utter another word. After all, even if he sold her off, she'd still make excuses for him saying he had no choice. On Monday morning, I returned to school with the 30 bucks I'd made collecting trash over the weekend. On Wednesday, my homeroom teacher rushed over in a panic. "Zhou Kai, come here. Something's happened at home." When I heard this, I calmly closed my book. "What's wrong with my family, Teach?" My homeroom teacher looked at me sympathetically. "Your mom tried to kill herself by cutting her wrists and is in the hospital. Your dad called and wants you to go take care of her." "Cutting her wrists?" I raised an eyebrow, then nodded. "Got it. I'll head there now. Thanks for telling me." With my homeroom teacher's help, I went to the hospital. When I got to the ward, Mom was still hysterical. "Let me die. Please, just let me die. Wah. I can't live with this shame anymore." The medical staff pinned her down on the hospital bed and gave her a sedative shot. I walked over with a blank face. "Mom, what's the deal? Why'd you try to off yourself by cutting your wrists? Dad beating you again?" My words made the nearby medical staff turn to look at my mom in surprise. But when my mom saw this, she panicked and shook her head firmly. "Why are you spouting nonsense in front of everyone? Your dad's never laid a hand on me." Hearing this, I wasn't surprised at all. Even if Dad beat her to death, she'd probably consider dying by his hand a blessing. "So why'd you try to kill yourself?" I asked flatly. Mom's face flushed with embarrassment as tears started dripping down one after another. "Ethan, your dad, how could he?" I looked at her quietly, waiting for her to explain why she tried to kill herself. But she pursed her lips and shook her head. "It's nothing. I was just being stupid and tried to kill myself. Don't drag your dad into this." Hearing her such a clumsy denial, I just nodded. "Oh, if there's nothing else, I'll head back to school. You can call Dad to take care of you." My mom's face fell, and she stared at me with words trapped in her throat. I could tell she wanted me to stay and look after her. But why? She's got a husband. Before she could say a word, I spun around and bolted out. Then I went to the hospital restroom and pulled up the home security footage. Soon, I discovered why she tried to kill herself. Last night, 3 strangers entered my house. As they left, they were all buckling their belts. After they left, my mom stumbled out of the bedroom looking like a mess and started screaming her lungs out at my dad. My dad straight up punched her a few times. "Bitch, who the hell do you think you are? How dare you talk back to me? It's your damn privilege you can earn cash for me to blow." There are tons of women out there willing to earn cash for me. You should kiss the ground I walk on for even picking you. If you keep acting up, I'll divorce you. Even without you, I can easily find a new pretty and obedient wife. Mom was instantly scared when Dad said he'd divorce her. Then she dropped to her knees and clutched his legs, desperately begging him not to leave her. Darling, I'll do whatever you say. Please don't leave me. What about the kids if we divorce? I'll be judged by everyone for the rest of my life. A smug look then spread across my father's face. Should have thought of this sooner. He then flipped the red banknotes in his hands and grinned so wide his eyes disappeared. Look, you made $2,000 in one night. Isn't that way faster than grinding away at your damn job? Go clean up the house. My mother immediately hunched her back and nodded obediently, then went back to her room to clean up. My mom has always been a neat freak. Even if Dad was constantly making a mess at home, she'd clean everything up afterward. But my dad's actions really cut her deep. Around 2 a.m., my dad noticed she'd slit her wrist. He immediately called an ambulance and carried her downstairs on his back in a panic. After learning why Mom tried to kill herself, I just felt how utterly pathetic it all was. Oh, so this is the perfect husband she's always going on about, a man who'd pimp out his own wife for money and even play lookout at the door. Even after being humiliated and hurt like that, she still kept trying to clean up his mess when she came to. But if she can fool herself, how can she possibly fool everyone else? If this gets out, I'll forever be known as the son of a whore. But I couldn't care less about my reputation now. No matter how nasty people get, can any of them top my mom's mouth? Plus, they're the ones who did all that disgusting shit, not me. I'll definitely get good grades and get the hell out of here. After finals, I checked the security cameras to make sure no one shady was around before going home. When winter break rolled around, it got way colder. I was still stuck in the same puffy coat from years back. That thing couldn't trap heat for shit anymore. When I got home, Mom was tying a scarf around Dad's neck while fussing over him. Honey, it might snow today. Be careful walking home after cards. You're a family's backbone. Can't afford to slip. My mom looked tenderly at my dad. My dad was wearing a brand new winter coat and nodded impatiently. Yeah. Then he headed out without another word. When he saw me, he just patted my head and said, "Ethan, I'm heading out. Listen to your mom." I couldn't be bothered to answer and walked in with my backpack. The moment I stepped inside, my mom shot me an unhappy look. "Kai, your dad was talking to you. Why didn't you answer him? Is that how your teachers taught you to behave?" She glared at me sharply. She wouldn't let anyone disrespect my dad at home. I gave her a cold once-over and said pointedly, "Looks like Dad's been treating you real nice lately, now that he's willing to spring for new clothes." Mom's face shifted instantly, her smile turning strained. She knew exactly where the money for those new clothes came from, though it wasn't something she wanted to dwell on. But I didn't wait for her answer and just went straight back to my room. Whenever he got some cash, Dad would be all smiles, praising how amazing she was. So over the month, Mom started to feel less guilty. But around me, she still felt guilty, afraid I'd realize how dirty the money for those clothes was. I didn't wait for her to answer and just went straight back to my room. That night, my dad blew through all the cash he'd gotten, stumbled home drunk and pissed off, then started beating my mom. The moment he saw Mom, he laid into her. This time, the insults changed. "You think you're better than me, you filthy whore? Huh? What happened to being all high and mighty? Now you're acting like this? I'll kill you, you shameless bitch. I'll divorce you sooner or later and get myself a fresh, untouched virgin." My mom was deeply hurt by his words and couldn't stop herself from yelling back. "James, you're heartless. If you hadn't let them in, do you think I'd ever end up like this? Sob, you heartless bastard. You're the one who forced me into this. Now you dare look down on me and even want a divorce? I'll die before I ever divorce you." Seeing she actually yelled back at him, Dad got even madder. His huge fists rained down relentlessly on her. I put on my headphones, buried myself under the covers, and tried to drown out the sounds of beating and screaming from outside. When I got up the next day, Dad was already gone, and Mom sat on the sofa crying nonstop. Ethan, you up? My mother suddenly stared straight at me. I gave her a cool look and muttered, yeah. Did you hear me and your dad fighting last night? She asked carefully, checking my face. That look on her face was downright laughable. Now of all times, she wants to keep up her pathetic pride in front of her kid? Don't you two fight every single day? Who even knows what it's about? Got stuff to do, won't be back for lunch. I picked up my backpack and left home. Before leaving, I watched her let out a heavy sigh of relief. It snowed heavily last night, so there aren't many people outside now. Not many plastic bottles in the trash bins either. Instead of collecting recyclables, I took my report card and went around nearby residential areas asking if anyone needed a tutor for their kids. Auntie, I'm really affordable, just $5 an hour. Here's my report card. If you need proof, you can check with my school. Everything's legit, I swear. I told a chubby auntie. I recalled her kid had taken plenty of tutoring sessions, but her grades never budged. Seeing that I came in first every time and aced several subjects, her eyes lit up. $5 an hour? That's crazy cheap. All right, let's give you a shot. She nodded and let me come over. When I got to her place, her daughter was hunched over her winter break homework, struggling to figure it out. She flinched when her mom walked in. Mom, you're home. Sophia, this is the new tutor I found for you. Have her teach you for an hour and see how it works. Sophia gave me a curious look and nodded. Their house was warm, so my freezing body started to thaw out. Then I calmly explained the questions to Sophia. Looks like you kids get each other better. I'd gotten a college student tutor for Sophia before, but she couldn't stay focused for 15 minutes. This time, she actually sat through an hour straight. I couldn't help asking, Auntie, can I stay on as her tutor? Sure thing. Come by every morning at 9, teach till 3. We'll feed you lunch and count 6 hours daily. Sound good? I felt relieved and nodded gratefully. No problem at all. I knew the plump auntie noticed my ragged clothes and skinny frame, so she made a point to invite me for lunch. When I got home in the afternoon, Mom frowned and said, "Where have you been roaming all day? Didn't even answer your damn phone." I looked at her coldly, went to study at a classmate's. Didn't hear the phone. When Mom saw I still had my backpack, she let it drop. That night, I was still doing homework when the door suddenly creaked open. "Honey, you." My mother's voice cut off abruptly. There was a stranger at the door. My father shot her a glare, then shoved the man inside with a grin and snapped, "My buddy's crashing here. You got a problem with that?" My mother wrung her hands, shaking her head. "Of course not," she whispered. Then she whispered, "Kai's home today. Did you forget? What if he finds out?" My father felt a pang of guilt, but his gambling urge overpowered any sense of shame. What's there to be scared of? He won't find out anyway. They all quickly went into the house. Not long after, I heard strange noises coming from the bedroom next door. In an instant, my stomach churned violently. I wanted to puke. Disgusting. So fucking vile. These disgusting creatures are my parents. If I hadn't lived through a past life, I'd probably be charging in with a knife right now. But she didn't deserve that. She doesn't deserve my protection. Ever since she ruined my life for my dad, she stopped being my mom. Over an hour later, the noise in the room finally died down. Soon after, I heard Mom sob while Dad tried calming her with gentle words. Before long, the crying faded, only to be overtaken by those same sickening noises again. Once people throw away their shame and morals, they're worse than beasts. The next day, both my mom and dad were home at the same time, which hardly ever happened, and actually made me breakfast. They tried to feel me out, and when they saw I didn't notice anything wrong, they both let out a sigh of relief. Little did they know, I couldn't care less about their business. After breakfast, I went to Nanan's house to do some tutoring. The new year was just around the corner. My mom started hustling first thing in the morning, wrapping dumplings and tangwan. Around this time, they apparently realized me being home didn't change anything, so they started acting bolder. Every few days, they'd bring someone home. I didn't report them because I knew even if they got caught, my mom would probably say it had nothing to do with my dad, or even admit she'd done something with another man behind his back. In that case, illegal matters would just become family issues. As I had been hoping, school finally started. I couldn't wait to pack up my things and the cash I'd made tutoring over winter break, heading to school first thing in the morning. That filthy house just makes me sick now. This time, I'm determined to rely on my own efforts and slowly escape the toxic swamp of my family, step by step. I won't give them another chance to hurt me. When I got to school, the class rankings were already posted up. I didn't let myself down and got first place. My homeroom teacher knew my family was struggling and that I usually stuck to plain steamed buns, so she'd already gotten some money from the academic office for me. Jokai, keep it up. Stash this money secretly and don't breathe a word to your parents. We didn't call them either, the teacher said, her eyes soft with worry. The homeroom teacher gave me a sympathetic look. I gave her a solemn nod of thanks. Thanks, Teach. With this money, I could finally stop being so strict with myself about food. In my previous life, I was only 160 centimeters by age 18 from years of not getting enough nutrients. This time, I don't want to stay so scrawny anymore. The cafeteria food was cheap, so I started eating meat and drinking milk with every meal, trying to bulk myself up as fast as possible. To prevent growing pains from a growth spurt, I even splurged on some calcium supplements. After eating like this for over half a month, my knees started hurting. But I couldn't control the smile spreading across my face. I knew my nutrition was finally improving, and I was actually getting taller now. It wasn't long before my clothes started to run short. The homeroom teacher couldn't stand seeing this and quietly slipped me a bundle of clothes. Jokai, these are my brother's old clothes. Hope you don't mind. Thank you, teacher. Why would I mind? Thank you, teacher. How could I possibly mind? I replied gratefully. In fact, the only reason I survived those years in my past life was because so many decent folks kept looking out for me. If it weren't for them, I wouldn't have made it to 18. But my mom hated me so much, and every bit of kindness I got from others was drowned out by her constant curses. She took away the little warmth I had left. On the eve of the high school entrance exam, my mom got pregnant. By the time I found out, the baby was already 3 months along, but I wasn't sure if it was even his. Plus, an abortion would cost money at the hospital, so she kept putting it off. But she didn't want to keep the baby. And my dad certainly wasn't going to let having a child get in the way of her earning money. One day, after hashing it out, my mom suddenly turned to my dad and said, "Hubby, why don't you just kick it out? Like they do in those TV dramas? Don't they always pull this kind of stunt on TV? That way we can skip the hospital abortion and save the cash." My dad paused for a moment before nodding in agreement. "Darling, sorry you have to endure this. I'll handle it when I get back tonight. Need some liquid courage to go through with this mess. You know I'd never hurt you sober, right?" Mom got all emotional again, teary-eyed. "Honey, you're so sweet." So that night, when my dad stumbled home drunk, he started pummeling my mom's belly again. "Whose bastard is this, huh?" My dad, eyes bloodshot, slammed his knee into her stomach again and again. After just a couple of kicks to the stomach, my mom's face went ghostly pale as she kept pleading, "Stop. It hurts. Stop hitting me, honey. My stomach hurts." But my dad was drunk. How could he possibly listen to her? "Huh? Hurt already? Think I'm dumb? I ain't even hit you proper yet." Then he kept beating her, kicking her stomach on purpose. Minutes later, blood had spread across the floor. My mom was writhing on the ground, clutching her stomach. "Honey, the baby's coming out." My dad stared at the blood-soaked floor and finally regained some clarity. "All right, I'm gonna head to bed. You mop the floor." With that, he stumbled into the bedroom and immediately passed out snoring. At first, my mom was relieved the kicking actually worked to terminate the pregnancy, saving the surgery fee. But soon, she started to panic. Because the bleeding wouldn't stop. Hunched over in pain, she crawled desperately toward the bedroom and banged on the door. "Honey, help me." But my dad was out cold and didn't hear a thing from her frantic pounding on the door. She had to crawl to the living room coffee table to dial 120 and call an ambulance. By the time the ambulance arrived and rushed her to the hospital, it was already too late. Don't blame my husband. I just tripped and fell by accident. But she didn't realize she'd never wake up again. When I found out, it was already the next afternoon. I wasn't surprised at all when I heard Mom died from Dad kicking her so bad she miscarried and bled out. Looking at her ghostly pale face in the hospital, I couldn't help wondering, did she finally get the death she deserved? Beaten to death by the man she loved most, she probably accepted it like sweet syrup, without a hint of resentment or regret. At her funeral, my dad dropped to his knees wailing with snotty tears, putting on his remorse act. But I figure of all that grief, at least 90% was him crying over losing his cash cow. If I were a girl, I suspect after Mom's death he wouldn't hesitate to make me take her place earning dirty money for him. Afterwards, I compiled videos showing my dad abusing Mom and forcing her into shady business, then anonymously sent them to Grandma. After she married my dad, my mom completely cut ties with her family. But seeing how she died, I figured they wouldn't just sit back and do nothing. Not long after, the police hauled my dad away. He was convicted of multiple charges and got 5 years behind bars. For me, 5 undisturbed years were enough to truly toughen my wings. 3 years later, I got into the top university in China and moved my household registration to the campus independently. After my dad got out of prison, I applied to a graduate program abroad and settled overseas permanently. I'll never go back to China for the rest of my life, and I won't let a chronic gambler like him cling to me ever again.